Good evening and welcome to this episode of The Big Picture, the first week of September. And as you know, we bring you big guests and for very important conversations. My name is Tom Mukhwana and I'm your lead host today. My co-host, Justine Wanda.
Hi, everyone.
Is with me today, as usual. And we have a very special guest for you today. We are joined by environmental activist Phyllis Omido, who 10 years ago led the fight for justice for thousands and thousands of residents in a small slum in Mombasa called Owino Uhuru. We'll be getting to Phyllis in a minute. Before we do that, Uncensored premiered a documentary yesterday titled Up in Smoke. The reporter Martin Siele went back to Owino Uhuru after 10 years of government inaction and filmed this story for you. It's a devastating story on injustice and inaction from a government that is meant to protect us. Here's the trailer.
The government has remained mum on the deaths and suffering of residents of Owino Uhuru slum.
Welcome to Owino Uhuru, the informal settlement in Mombasa that shocked the world 10 years ago.
Sisi ambao hatukusoma, sisi wanyonge, tumevamiwa.
Hiyo moshi imeni affect, yani siwezi nikatembea for long yani ama kupanda mlima.
Justice has finally been served. An environmental court has awarded 1.3 billion shillings to residents of Owino Uhuru slum.
Finally, things were about to turn around, or so they thought.
Wakati ilikuja tukaenda kotini, tukashinda, ikasemekana neema wameapili, nikaona sasa hapa watoto wangu watakufa, wakati tukukaa hapa watakufa.
Lead poisoning is actually dangerous. The problem being that lead tends to accumulate in the body. You can't really say there's any safe level because lead is not even supposed to be there in the first place.
In its ruling, the Supreme Court cited 20 deaths linked to lead poisoning in Owino Uhuru. However, members of the community say the number is far higher.
Watoto wa huku wenye wanasaliwa, wenye patu wako huku patu wako na shida. Sababu neema ichasafisha mtaa. Na huu mtaa watoto walikuwa wanachezea hapo, hizi nyumba zenye walikuwa wanaishi ni patu hizo. Mabati ni yale.
For 10 years, this community has been hopeful that the courts would rule in their favor.
Both of them had lead in their blood and both of them died.
We are going to fight against any form of impunity that denies communities justice when they have been wronged.
Environmental activism comes with a lot of risk. I was attacked at my home very early on in my activism by gunmen. I had to flee, and then shortly after that I was arrested and arraigned in court for this Owino Uhuru case.
The multi-billion compensation and remediation has sparked new threats and fueled new divisions within the community. Mzeogola, Scholastica and the people of Owino Uhuru have only experienced more difficulties despite this positive turn.
Sina imani na neema kabisa, sababu hata nikiwaona still inatetemeka, wamekuja tena kutuua.
Unafikiria mtajificha chini ya mikono ya polisi? Mnakuja kuweaponize county against us. Shame on you, Neema. Shame on you, criminals.
So I've just been informed that it's actually been 16 years since the Owino Uhuru story broke by Phyllis Omido herself. Phyllis, asante sana for joining us. By the way, you can watch the documentary that you've just seen, its trailer, on YouTube. It's on Uncensored's pages. It's something that it's worthwhile. It's something you should watch to remind yourself of what country you live in. But Phyllis, it's been 16 years, as you've just told me. The first time this story came to light was after protests in 2009. A quick timeline of what exactly happened here. In 2007, a metal Tafinary EPZ Limited, this is a company sets up in Changamwe with no environmental impact assessment by NEMA or government. So they just set up, and the operation involved melting lead, if I'm not wrong. In 2009, tests on children are done, and the plant shuts down. 2010, the first deaths from lead poisoning are recorded. 2011, the company, Metal Refinery, goes back into operation. Then in 2013, NEMA issues a closure. The order is again lifted. And in 2014, finally, the company closes down, it shuts down. In 2015, NEMA is grilled and brought to the National Assembly for questioning on this. This is, I've just taken us through an 8-year quick timeline of exactly what happened. But you lived through those protests, you lived with those people, and you had and represented their voice. Could you tell us what exactly happened?
Yeah, so Kenya
at that time was setting up these export processing zones,
Yeah.
which were supposed to be preferential trade setups where Kenyans would get transfer of skills and employment, you know. And there was a push by the Export Processing Zones Authority to fast track the setup of industries in Kenya. So anyone who was coming in, they were being allowed to start operating within 30 days. That's what Kenya was selling. And so the smelters started cropping up. And one such smelter was Metal Refinery EPZ Limited, which set up in Owino Uhuru in 2007. I saw an ad and applied for a job there as an admin officer in 2009, early 2009. And I worked there for about 3 months. And everything about it was wrong. First of all, I did not know it was because it was metal refinery. It said nothing to do with lead. So you have to get there first after you've signed the contract to understand that you're actually working in a smelter. But I realized that there were no licenses, whereas the initial EIA that you people didn't exist. So I insisted that this had to be put in place. And I was tasked to get a lead agent, a licensed lead agent, to carry out the environmental impact assessment. And this is the first time that I came into contact with the people of Owino Uhuru, because it's only a wall that separates Owino Uhuru and Metal Refinery EPZ. So I started doing the due process for an EIA, which includes community participation. And what I learned was not good. These people had been operating for 2 years. They had been channeling their waste into Owino Uhuru. The ducks, the chicken, the goats that drank water that was passing through that river all died. This was public knowledge. So how come anyone was not acting? But I found when no one was galvanizing the community, no one was standing up for them. But I made a lot of friends within Owino Uhuru. I met Scholar, Pastor Anastasia. I sat with them and understood where they were coming from. As God would have it also, I had a son by then. He was about 3 years old. And he started falling sick. And I started looking for a solution. And I found that he was exposed to lead poisoning. He had 35 micrograms per deciliter of lead in blood. I think that was just meant to be a trigger for me, because that then triggered the whole, I quit, started galvanizing the community, took the first 3 children, looked for Professor Njoroge Karanja from Greenbelt, because then it is Greenbelt that was the environmental organization in Kenya. We tested the first 3 children, all of them tested positive for lead poisoning. I sent these letters to NEMA, to the Export Processing Zones Authority, to Ministry of Health. I got responses, but not good. Like NEMA said, I was making it up. I still look at that letter today and laugh, because they said they were ready to defend these allegations in a court of law if I chose to take that path, you know. That was very early on. Still, you know, my background was in I had worked within the corporations and industry, and I had a very good relationship with NEMA, the export processing zones, you know. They would serve me when I was representing corporate. But when I started representing Owino Uhuru, it was a whole different ballgame. The doors were closed. Friends stopped picking my calls from NEMA and EPZA. You know, everything just turned when I started to speak out on the case of Owino Uhuru. I assumed that once I told them that something was wrong, because initially what we were asking for was for them to move the smelter to a place that was not so populous. Because Owino Uhuru has 3,000 people at that time. Now it's higher. We have about 3,500 people in Owino Uhuru now. And what we were requesting is for NEMA to ask them to move the smelter from that location. Yeah. It was dangerous, but that was not forthcoming. So that started the whole agitation for the shutdown of metal refinery. What Kenyans need to understand is this. In Changamwe alone, there were 3 smelters: Kenya Metal Refinery, Aclara Industries, and Metal Refinery EPZ. We have not touched Aclara Industries or Kenya Metal Refinery, where we know there's very high lead levels. There are people there, even food is being manufactured in some of those godowns where those smelters were. Our agitation essentially closed around 17 smelters across the country, you know?
Yeah.
Because most of them were located in very similar surroundings, like where there were communities that were mostly informal settlements. That's where they go and set up the smelters because they get cheap labor. You understand? The ones in Changamwe was because of their proximity also to the port. But much as they were thinking of maximizing profits, this decision to set up these smelters was devastating. We have tracked the case of Owino Uhuru. We have not tracked the other smelters across the country.
Yeah.
So it's something that we all as Kenyans need to wake up to. If our environmental agency can tell us that they did not have expertise to understand lead poisoning, then we're in a very bad state as a country.
Yeah. And years later, and Justine, I'll rope you in after this. Years later, I've seen in the documentary that was done over 10 years ago now, that there was a lady called Lynette, and she passes on by 2014 because of high levels of lead in her blood. And you've mentioned that so many other people, including a lady that is featured in a documentary called Irene, who has a lump on her throat because of the lead effects. You've said that so many people, more than at that time, are now living and settled within that area of Owino Uhuru. Is that place safe now?
Owino Uhuru is not safe. But what is the state of the economy in Kenya right now? People have very little options. Owino Uhuru is an informal settlement. They can pay 800 shillings per month rent, you know, for those houses. Where else can they find such housing? These are the people that provide labor for all those industries in Changamwe. You understand? Yeah. What is the minimum wage that they earn? So much as we have tried to relocate some of them, we have helped some of them move out of there because their situation was really bad. They would not have survived. But some, unfortunately, have had fatalities, like the case of Lynette. Lynette, we know her story. She tried to conceive. She tried hard. We kept telling her, please stop. She had 3 miscarriages. She got a 4th one, carried it to term because now this was 2014. We had closed down the smelter. She managed to carry her baby to term, gave birth, and a few days later she died because of the high lead levels. She gave birth to her baby, and her baby was born positive. We went and tested him. He was born positive with lead poisoning. Yeah.
So this is passed down generations. Justine, does this remind you of something?
Maybe then imejam. I think one of the things that really shocks me is like, how do you establish an EPZ that close to where people live? I understand the cheap labor and obviously not wanting people to spend a lot of money commuting, and also just making it easier that for you to set up and not pay too much in the initial capital costs for setting up the company. But could you take us through what the establishment of an EPZ looks like? Because I think a lot of people are like, yeah, we're happy, companies are coming. But what does that mean? And also, what are the standards that are supposed to be met for the establishment of an EPZ, especially for something so detrimental to people's health like smelting?
It is not for lack of expertise that we suffer as a country. We have physical planners, so many of them, both at the national government and at the county government. We are supposed to plan development in Kenya. It's not supposed to be haphazard. You can't just because Owino Uhuru was there first. It's not the smelter that came first. This Owino Uhuru community existed, and they have a title deed. It's written the Owino Uhuru community. You understand? They have shown us that they existed immediately after independence because they came during the time where the railway was being built. So the planners should have planned industry better. Now, when it comes to the case of Metal Refinery EPZ, this is a lead smelter. It is common sense. The EPZ employ an environmental officer, very qualified. They pay him a lot of money to advise them. What was he doing? Why was this thing licensed? Why were they allowed to operate without proper safeguards in place to protect the people? You cannot tell me someone who has a degree in environmental studies did not know lead was detrimental to the health of humans. You cannot convince me that way. So much as we want development, and we are looking at how to build our economy, we have to do it in a way that is sustainable. Because if you look at Owino Uhuru now, we have destroyed a very huge labor force that is in Owino Uhuru. Many have died, some have relocated back. The health burden on the communities, on the families, on a day-to-day basis. Now, the worst thing about lead poisoning is it destroys the IQ of the children. So if a child would have moved out of this informal settlement, become a doctor, become a lawyer, they cannot, because the IQ points are knocked off. You do not recover IQ points after they've been knocked off, even when you shed the lead in the body. So it's a very, very tragic case that has not only affected one generation, but it's intergenerational. It has affected children and their potential. Yeah.
Many years on, there is a Supreme Court ruling and 1.3 billion shillings is supposed to be paid as compensation to the community. Was that done? And two, and even more importantly, has anyone been jailed for all these debts?
And just to piggyback off of this question, there was a ruling from the Environmental Court that awarded the residents of Owino Uhuru 1.3 billion. The case was appealed, it's like by NEMA, and it was overturned. But we were speaking earlier, and you said that decision, you've spoken to lawyers and people in the legal community about that particular decision, but it doesn't, any of the supporting arguments do not hold. But then the Supreme Court still gave the win to the residents of Owino Uhuru. Like, what does it mean to go through a process where even at the highest court, like, justice is traded around arguments that do not live up to the conditions that were faced, particularly by the residents of the community?
You know, even before we went to the Environment and Land Court to lodge the case in 2016, we had exhausted all the other mechanisms within the Constitution. We had petitioned Parliament with all the signatures in Owino Uhuru. We petitioned Senate. Parliament ordered a task force to be created, a task force that was chaired by NEMA, actually, included all the state agencies, including the police. Yeah? Mm-hmm. Why? Because we were pushing for justice, not only for compensation. We wanted those who made those decisions to be brought to book. We wanted a situation where Scholastica today would not see NEMA and be trembling, because she would know that the person who made that decision was charged in a court of law, was arraigned on the criminal charges, and was jailed or was fined for what they did to her. All those children that have died, I always remember Sammy. Sammy died 3 years old, very handsome boy. The first time I met him, he fell in love with me and I fell in love with him. And I asked him, Sammy, how are your loved ones? Wapenda, he told me, ni wewe tu, I love you only. Of course he stole my heart, you know? And Sammy had high lead levels in his blood. And we tried really hard. We fought really hard, and I brought his lead levels down. I got a nutritionist through the organization, and that nutritionist was monitoring his food and treatment. My target was to bring down his lead levels. Sammy was brilliant, even at baby class. You know, he was always top. His teacher said he was always top. He's a very charismatic boy. He has his whole future ahead of him. But Sammy's skin started peeling off at some point. It refused to stick to his body. Why? Because the acid rain had been raining on their playground for years while these children played. And eventually, Sammy's skin refused to hold on his body. And we could not even hold him to comfort him because that would cause so much pain. And that evening, I went to visit Sammy, but I could not even touch him. And he asked me, are you coming? Are you coming to pick me and to take me home? I said, yes, of course, Sammy. I'll come and pick you and take you home. You don't worry, I'll bring a big car and take you home. Yeah. That night, I received that tragic call. Sammy has passed on. So the decisions that are made by government, there has to be some form of accountability. Do you understand? There has to be some form. They cannot end at redress. They cannot end at compensation. Compensation for me is a first step. I have given my life to this cause. Yes. And I'm coming back. I'm coming back. Even after, first, I want the victims to get some kind of reparations for the suffering that they have endured. But I want to go for those people. I have all those documents. Those people who signed and made decision on behalf of Kenyans to kill all these people. And I sat in their offices. Some retired very well. They were paid packages. We want to go for them because that is what the parliamentary task force recommended. And that has not been done. It is part of what the Environment and Land Court recommended. It has not been done. So we have to exhaust this thing, not only because of us, because we have to create system within this country, justice system that are actually anchored within law. You understand? Yes. Yeah.
But part of the recommendations that were made by the task force and all the commissions or committees that went and visited the place, and including the UN High Commission, was that this area, first of all, people need to be relocated to a safer environment. 2, excavate and remove contaminated soil and dust from affected areas for safe disposal. This was NEMA's job. Restore the environment of Owino Uhuru settlement and its ecosystem. Has this been done?
Okay. It has never been done. This is 2025. There's nothing NEMA has ever done. Now, the judgment of the Environment and Land Court gave NEMA 90 days or 120 days to do that work. I think 120 days to have started the work on remediation because they appreciated the urgency to save lives. You understand? So NEMA appealed the judgment. We went to court to protect that judgment of the Environment and Land Court. NEMA won at the Court of Appeal. The Court of Appeal essentially told them, take the money, 700 million is yours. All you need to do is apply for it from Treasury. Go and remediate the community. They were given 1 year to do that. That's a long time. NEMA came to court and said they had not done anything because of procurement procedures. They needed 90 days. They were given 1 year to do that. This is 2025. NEMA did nothing to comply with that judgment. Now we won at the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court was very smart. They told them to show what they had done to comply with the Environment and Land Court and the Court of Appeal judgment. They knew they had not done this. You saw that clip where I was chasing them from. They went to 13th floor headquarters, police headquarters, to hold a meeting so that I would not storm in. But what choice did I have? They have gone there. They've misinformed all the state agencies and all the government, Office of the President, the county commissioner. They're misinforming them and lying to them, and they were holding a meeting there, purporting to do remediation. So I went and told them, no, go back to court and show your compliance. And you were given 3 months. 3 months ended in March. They're holding a meeting in April. The Supreme Court had given them 3 months to go and show their compliance with the Environment and Land Court and the Court of Appeal judgment. I mean, NEMA is a mess.
And this is the same same agency that is meant to keep Kenyans safe in the environment. It's just mindless.
It's so sad when I see Mamo Bimamo receiving international awards. We are going to start writing to those people giving them awards. Because what is the reality of Kenyans?
Yeah.
How many Kenyans would say they have confidence in them in their own neighborhood?
Noise.
Honestly,
Is
we're telling
one.
people to soundproof their houses. Like if it's too loud, just soundproof your house and just like live there. Then when there's a fire, I don't know how you'll get out because you can't even hear anything. I think we're getting to a point where a lot of government agencies love to abscond duty. They're like, if it's upon you to take care of yourself, and then we will see where we can cover you. And that doesn't even happen in situations where residents are in dire need of help. They're in dire need of the institutions to work so that they do not have to keep fighting for their lives. One of the things that I want to touch on is just the difficulty in which getting justice, a whole 10 years of you just following up, 16 years, that's a lot. You've raised a 16-year-old. That's crazy. Like if justice can become a teenager and still there's like no one is held accountable, there are no consequences, and it almost seems like by the time Owino Uhuru the situation is even resolved, there's like 6 to 10 other tragedies that have happened because it's not just the only one. So for me, it's like, what does compensation even look like? What does justice even look like for the residents of this area? They've been let down so badly by so many institutions. What does justice look like, and can it even be achieved?
When you think about that, you know, there's a case now in Kenya where the president has ordered compensation for victims, yeah? And we saw the wheel rolling and things were going and people were being sworn in. But Owino Uhuru has been seeking justice for how long? It means following the law, the rule of law in Kenya doesn't work. That's the point we are making, that if you follow the law, you're on your own. Just get a politician to make a declaration, then you'll get justice. You understand? Yeah. That is why the Owino Uhuru case for me is not just about the right to a clean and healthy environment. It's about systems that are put in place. And instead of them working, especially justice systems, victims that are supposed to be compensated and protected, they are victimized even the more. I mean, look at Owino Uhuru. People are arrested. People still have criminal records until today in Owino Uhuru because of their fight. Like Makamenchu and all of them, about 16 people in that community, have criminal records that the police have refused to remove, even though we were acquitted in court. Yeah. You understand? Yeah. So it is injustice on top of injustice on top of injustice. How do you even explain to Kenyans that the system does not work? We have to come up, we have to rise up as Kenyans and demand that the rule of law be upheld and that things be done in the manner that is prescribed within our constitution, not extrajudicial means.
I don't think, and I'm about to make a very factual but problematic statement, that the rule of law and rights, they don't exist if you're poor. In this country, the worst thing you can do is to be poor. You'll be denied good education, you'll be denied a cloth on your back, you'll be denied clean, fresh air to breathe. Every single thing will be taken from you. And when you're on your deathbed, you'll also be denied the life support that you need to get the healthcare. Speaking of life, so many people still live in that area. I just want us to get to the figures. How many people have died so far? How many people are living with the effects of lead? Because in that documentary, you can see skin on the feet of children, and it looks like it's peeling off, like you said. How is the situation? How are the people there being affected by the lead poisoning that exists?
Actual death toll, who is more than 300. We lost more than 230 children, more than 70 adults. If you look at the role of the smelter workers, almost all of them died. And they used to employ over 280 people because they used to work in shifts, so 140. Almost all those workers have died. Very few of them are still alive. I have a case of like Hamisi Dio. He had over 100 micrograms. You know, when we started, WHO was defining lead poisoning at 10 micrograms per deciliter of lead. They defined it lower. They said, no, that is too high. It's 5 micrograms. Right now, the lead poisoning is defined at 5 micrograms. Hamisi had over 100 and something. Lynette had 280 micrograms per deciliter of lead. Irene had 420. She was the highest. Like we tested and tested and tested. We were not believing. She had 420. This was done by the Ministry of Health, not private labs, you know. So these are crazy levels. And it's very unfortunate that even after proving this over and over and over in court, that still systems do not work.
Yeah.
You know? Systems do not. Kenya still, because they were told by Ministry of Health, they were told by Parliament that the Ministry of Health should gazette our own standards so that we are not depending always on WHO, because South Africa has their own standards of how they define lead poisoning. Kenya does not even have standards. So even our case, we were depending on international. You've heard the story of Scholastica. When we were testing them, we had to export their blood to South Africa to be tested. There were no labs. Actually, this government chemist wrote to me and said they did not have capacity to test for lead poisoning. I still have that letter in my office. This is how many centuries after lead was discovered. We all know its effect. Why is Kenya not testing it? We are bringing in industry. We know the correlation between industry and lead. We are bringing in mining companies. We know the correlation. Why are we not gazetting our own standards to protect our people?
Yeah. Just
That's Stevie. I just wanted to ask, and I think maybe for a lot of people who don't understand, how does lead kill you? Because I think one of the things that a lot of people, if you tell them lead poisoning, they're just picturing, oh, something is in your bloodstream and it's probably in like a high percentage. But how does it present up until?
Because lead is one of the heaviest metals. It's called chuma risasi. It's used to make bullets.
Yes.
You know, it's very heavy. And now you put it into someone's body. The person ingests it, through the smoke, the pollution that was happening. It was because lead is heavy metal. It doesn't go up. Yes. It comes back and falls on the ground, and the children are playing and eating the soil and the dust and all that is, you know. So everyone in the community is just ingesting lead every day, So the first signs were high fevers in the children. Like my son started having high fevers, watery eyes, diarrhea. And it took us like a month, hospitalized for a month before we knew it was lead poisoning. And then we tested the 3 children, and then they tested positive. Now it presents differently over time. And depends also on the genetics. As I've said, the worst thing is for the children, it knocks off their IQ points, But the kidneys also are not able to process this heavy metal in your body. You understand? So we got a lot of kidney failure. At some point, Coast General Hospital, through Mombasa County, when Joho was governor, said we could do dialysis in Coast General Hospital, and they were charging us, I think, 6.5. I thought that was reasonable. We can raise that. Do you know, everyone that I took for dialysis, almost 10 people died. All their kidneys were completely destroyed because of the lead. The doctor said, yes, they need dialysis. All of them who went for dialysis died from different kinds of infections. So it presents differently. We have those now that have liver problems, but most of the people in Owino who right now have kidney failure. Now, when your kidney fails, you start getting things like high blood pressure. And even I have high blood pressure now. I have so many complications because of lead in my body. You understand? So it presents differently for each person, but it's very tragic. You can see, like for Irene, because of the very high lead levels, it completely destroyed her thyroid. You understand? So when we took her for medication, they said, no, you have to bring her lead levels down. We tried, we gave her calcium. Like I would travel out of the country and just buy a lot of calcium, fill one suitcase with calcium just for the community members to try and bring down the lead levels. Yes, we brought down the lead levels, but what did it do? We did not know that also forcing it out, like manually, also destroyed their kidneys. So Irene, when I tested her last a few years ago, one of her kidneys was completely gone. She was functioning on one kidney. We were working with Aga Khan Hospital and another hospital in Kilifi to try and manage her situation. She needs a lot of money. She first needs to go and get an operation for her thyroid. After that, then we have to look at her kidneys.
Irene, by the way, is still alive.
Irene, Irene.
Yeah.
No, yeah, Irene.
With the one with the thyroid that's swollen.
She's still alive, but hanging on by the thread. The doctors keep telling us. The doctors at Aga Khan, there's a time I asked them, like, what I wanted to take her in for the operation.
Yeah.
I asked them, like, give me a percentage of probability of success. They told me maybe 40%. So I just thought, no, it's not something I want to do.
Was that because of ongoing?
Because her levels were very high. Her thyroid was gone. One of her kidneys is not working. We want to take her under the knife. So I thought, no, let's wait until we have enough resources. Then we address her issue. But she's hanging on by the thread.
By a thread.
Yeah.
The story of compensation, Justine and Phyllis, is a story that is currently ongoing, right? I want us to briefly get into it before we move on to the next topic. But the government, led by the president, put together this panel that is meant to compensate victims of police brutality and state overreach during the past 2 years of protests. And part of that committee is the president of the Law Society of Kenya and also somebody, Irungu Houghton, who's at the leadership of Amnesty International. Those two people aside, compensation was also promised to people in Owino Uhuru, never came. People are still dying. The government is doing nothing to solve that. Again, money is being thrown at, with those people still walking scot-free, by the way, the people who are leading that profit-making scheme that killed all those people, the same thing is happening. Over 100 people killed in 2 years. The police officers that kill these people are still walking scot-free. What is the government doing? Is throwing money at an injustice problem.
I'll just say one of my biggest problems with the justice system in the country is it's not just that someone has been systemically harmed. We are thinking of a lot of people who I see have these conversations online, which is where I live, unfortunately. I see a lot of people being like, why don't you want the victims to get that money? And I'm like, the money is probably the least part of this equation because they will get that money. But also in a system where we've seen extrajudicial killings rise, we've seen people being put in a position where they can be harmed because you are given 500 shillings as a goon. You go out there, you don't have a lot of options. We live in an economic system that's already deeply problematic and disenfranchised. You take that 500. Actually, they give you 50, but they promise you 500. You betisha chomeka. You go to the streets. You're fighting other Kenyans who are fighting for their rights, right? Then they end up shooting you, and they also end up shooting the person who's protesting. And the person who's protesting is given money. Let's say they give the compensation actually goes through and they give them money. What sets I believe it sets a very dangerous precedent where you as the victim of an injustice, it's almost like they're telling you, you take this money and you don't get to say anything about the problem that is the policing in this country. You don't talk about you as a person who was harmed because why is the state doing that payout? It's an admission of guilt. Who is guilty? Who committed the crimes? So unless that part of the issue is also being addressed, and not just for this particular case of protest, it's also the system in which it produces these very officers. It produces these people who are undercover and they're saying, oh, we're working for people who we cannot tell you about. If those systems that attack target and shoot Bridget Njoki in her house and shoot Rex Masai in the middle of the street and shoot Eric Kieni in front of parliament, if those particular people are not held accountable, there are no consequences to their action, I don't believe we are talking about compensation. That compensation is just, the money is just one half of the equation. And we're not even talking about the emotional damage of losing a child. The future, Rex was supposed to go abroad just like a couple of weeks later. He was shot. Eric Kieni was supposed to be in university. He was shot. Then Denzel Omondi was supposed to graduate. He was shot. And these are just the stories that I know of. I feel like I've not covered the depth of the victims of police brutality and state violence during the maandamano. So when we talk about justice and people are telling us, or me in particular, we're Justin, we utaki watu wapate pesa. I'm like, look, me, I'm all for money all day, every day. We live in a capitalist country. But at the same time, if those conversations are not being had at the same time, and we're forming a task force, a committee, so that people can sit on a panel and feel good about the work they're doing, it's doing nothing to solve the injustices.
What within the system is supposed to address that? Within our current system, this is supposed to be the Office of the Attorney General.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yes.
They're the ones supposed to address the issue of victims. Yeah? And getting justice for Kenyans. But you know, the Office of the Attorney General has become a monster that fights against Kenyans at every step.
The AG doesn't even know where the public seal is. That's insane.
You say.
You're right.
Yeah.
So we need, for me, my activism has been targeted not at politicians, but at the state offices, at the institutions, because we need those institutions to work. Right now, I'm engaged in a very big fight with the Office of the AG and the Solicitor General. For Owino Uhuru and compensation, because they have something called, they are supposed to be holding something called a victim compensation fund.
Yes.
They are the ones supposed to tell the president that we as an office hold a victim compensation fund. If they are the ones who need expertise, maybe on human rights, they are the ones supposed to engage the Kenya National Human Rights Commission, write to them formally and say, we need your expertise on how best to carry out these reparations. You understand? But you see, this burden is left to Kenyans through CSOs.
Yes.
So when you are calling for justice, it means one Phyllis Omido or one other activist has to look for funds, you know, and then start following. And yet there are state institutions that are getting taxpayer funds that are supposed to ensure that these systems are working for Kenyans. So we need also to target our activism at these institutions. We need to call them out. The Office of the Solicitor General, since 6 months when we won this case in December, up to now, have lost the file of Owino Uhuru.
They've lost the file.
They don't know where the file is.
Is that willful?
In their system, it says it's in Mombasa. I went to the Mombasa office. I was told, no, they even showed me. They've transmitted it to Nairobi. Nairobi say
it's in Mombasa.
They don't know where it is.
Is
I know the person who's holding it,
Yeah.
hiding it, and I'm going to call him out if he doesn't behave. You
So is
understand?
it them escaping
But
accountability then?
It's not escaping accountability, just blackmailing us
Yeah.
for a personal interest.
Trying to frustrate you.
Yeah, trying to frustrate us for personal interest. You understand?
Yeah.
So they just refuse. They are just supposed to write one letter, maybe half a page, saying the Owino Uhuru community won this case against government, the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Environment, NEMA, the export processing zone. This is what they are supposed to be paid. And then they transmit it to the line ministries and treasury. You understand? This one letter, 6 months.
It's not there.
So we need to start targeting our activisms, not only at politicians. I know it's fancy to demonstrate against, but if you look at my activism, I target institutions because we must make these institutions work for Kenya.
Which is exactly what we should be doing consistently, Phyllis. I say this because institutions are the last line of defense against any form of injustice against Kenyans. Why do I say that? Because when SHA was passed, it went through Parliament. When the housing levy was passed, it went through Parliament. Parliament is an institution as well. As political as it is recognized as an institution, but nothing has been done about it. When things go out into the public and cases are brought and to the media, and the media speaks about children who are dying in hospital or people who can't access dialysis because SHA doesn't cover it, the institutions that are meant to be the last line of defense for Kenyans, for them to get these services, are bought by the people in power. SHA is the best example of that. It's where most Kenyans are dying right now because no healthcare. They're receiving healthcare that is either at a much lower cost than they should receive it. When you're supposed to get 500,000, you're getting 100,000, and the government shuts you from any sort of appeal for such money being given to you. So then you're right. Essentially, you're right. We should be targeting our activism at institutions. But every time you do that, Phyllis, you're killed.
I'm still alive.
Well,
he can't kill all of us. I might be dead by the end of this this whole thing.
Yeah.
But if we fear, like, if I decided not to stand up, what would have happened to Owino Uhuru? That community would have totally been wiped out. If Metro Refinery was still operating, those 3,000 people would very definitely be all dead today.
Yes.
We've looked at the employees of Metro Refinery, all of them are dead. So why is your life more important than Rex Masai's life? We have to stop being selfish as Kenyans. We have to give ourselves for this land if it's going to be better for our children. You understand?
Yes.
It's not an easy thing. I'm not saying that people should put their lives. It's not easy. You know, that day I had my daughter I have 2 kids. I have a 6-year-old girl. And I had my daughter in my car. And I held her and I told her, I don't know if I'm going to come back. And I called my friend and told her, my daughter is in the car at this place. Go and take her. Because I'm going to storm NEMA meeting. I'm not sure I'm going to come back alive. Because it's in the office of the county commissioner. It's full of police. It's a police headquarters. NSIS and everything is there. You're going to storm it as an individual. It's not an easy task. But we have to stand up if we want to see a better country. We cannot always run away to USA and they don't even want us anymore. After they take all our experts, then they kick us. They don't even respect us. Let us fight to make our home better for everyone equally. We go as a team, we go as countrymen, we go as Kenyans. It's our homeland. We fight for it and make it better.
Justine, speaking of activism and fighting for the rights of Kenyans, Justine, you're one of the people who are holding the line against the use of SHA and the cleansing of this project that is clearly failing. But the government is trying to compare it to NHIF and saying that this is a better scheme when in reality many people are dying.
I think the biggest problem with SHA for me, it's not that SHA is even just failing to pay claims. It's that SHA's institutional failure is a lack of imagination on the government's part on how to cover Kenyans well. NHIF had a lot of problems and it was covering certain things that maybe SHA was like ambitious about covering. But then the institution of SHA just came out of nowhere. Parliamentarians were like, yeah, the president pushed and we agreed.
It's a political child.
Yes.
SHA is not, it's not entrenched in
efficiency and function.
Yeah. There's nothing to do with function in it. There was no need. I've kept asking, do we have a decommissioning report for NHIF? Why did they suddenly decide to just give birth to something, a mongrel that nobody understands? I'll tell you for a fact, when NHIF was operating, it helped me a lot in Owino Uhuru. We got NHIF cards for so many victims in the community, and it was helping. We are unable to help those victims now under SHA. SHA is not working. It's simply not working. Especially for the most vulnerable, it does not work.
How are you unable to get cover for them? I'm curious to hear that.
First of all, the costs have gone up because, you know, NHIF were paying 6.5 per year per victim. And they were covering everything. They were covering for us bed, like when we were doing dialysis, for example. They could cover for us bed and this. That has gone, the premium has gone up and what they cover has gone down. And also the restrictions for the victims. Also, NHIF, you would, like pay today and someone would access healthcare tomorrow. With SHA, it's just a big problem.
Yeah.
So I work with communities that are carrying a health burden, very big health burden, not because of a decision that they made, but because of bad decisions that were made by government, and yet they don't have an escape. NHIF, I can say for sure, was helping us a lot.
In the case of Irene, who has kidney failure because of the lead poisoning, what's the difference like between years?
Now it's a pre-existing condition. SHA will not even cover it.
Okay, just to give a background of like how SHA works. SHA is already problematic in the amount of premiums they require a lot of people to pay. People are like, my entire salary is gone. Or like, that's how people are feeling considering the economic situation in the country. But SHA also uses a system called means testing. So means testing is when they look at someone's income, they look at someone's like just like how much you're paying in tax and everything, like every single economic decisions around you. That's what determines your cover and your premium. That's already a lot to ask in a system where our entire economic model is like a lot of people are informally employed, a lot of people are underemployed, and a lot of people are unemployed. So even if you're unemployed and you're paying 300 shillings and SHA tells you, oh, we're just going to give you 5,000 shillings to cover a small part of your payment to the hospital, where are you getting the rest of the money? Paying out of pocket is extremely expensive. Means testing in a country where people don't even know whether you've eaten or you like what, even if you have a roof over your head, if you don't have basic necessities and they're asking you to pay very high premiums and also not cover you, that's a system that was just doomed to fail because it was built in structural failure. As Phyllis has said, like they're not considering, like there's no ideology around that. It was not built for people and their needs. It was built from a very corporate standpoint, very let us get all the money we can.
The reality,
yes.
The reality of the people who are supposed to benefit from it.
Absolutely.
Because there's a class that does not feel anything because they are insured by private insurers, you know. But there are people like the Owino Uhuru community who wake up in the morning and go to look for work in the EPZs, and their whole pay for the day is maybe 500 shillings. And you're supposed to feed your family, pay your rent, educate your children, and pay for SHA.
A service that has somehow an insurance service that is meant to serve the poor people and the rich equally, somehow made expensive by the government.
But it's supposed to mainly cushion the poor.
The poor. That's what an insurance system is supposed to do.
It's because it's not a private thing, it's a government thing. It's supposed to cushion our most vulnerable. Yes. But I'll tell you for sure that in most informal settlements, people are not able to access SHA because of the restrictions.
Yeah. The government is just terrible at protecting its most vulnerable.
Yeah. If they maybe thought of us. And also one of the things I've been thinking about over the last couple of weeks is how SHA is named. Like the initial itself has like ha. It just feels like they're laughing at us.
True.
Yeah, it's like it's embedded in the name. Like they do not see us as people who are vulnerable, who need to be covered, who need to be taken care of. Because people in this country work extremely hard. Extremely hard. Being covered for medical care, not just for yourself, but also for your family members and your kids, that should be a no-brainer. Yeah. In the past, outside of NHIF, we used to have Edu Afya, we used to have Linda Mama. All those things were collapsed. Some of them were yes.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
I think a lot of.
And eliminating all of that institutional help, really just, it's sending a message that the government as it functions is not really thinking about the everyday person and what they need. And until they do, SHA is not going to work. Yeah.
But so also for me, have to look at like who comes up with policies for us, who informs policy, what are the citizens' platforms of agitation that we put in place, for example, when the budget is going to be passed, because you find like the corporations through KM bring their proposals to Treasury. What about us as citizens? What institutions represent us when it comes to the budget? Do we always have to go to the streets before we can influence policy in our country?
Yeah.
Very good question there.
Just so I can like piggyback on what you've said, I feel a lot of how we get to interact with the system is very reactive. We get at the end of it when a decision has been made. I remember when Shah was being floated around, I was very, please don't do this to us kind of person. And some people around me were like, no, it's going to be bigger, it's going to be better. And I'm like, no, this is actually what it says. And by the time our participation is making some kind of impact, it's already too late. Parliamentarians have said, psych, and they've left us out. And then when it starts collapsing, then the reaction comes in again. So I feel a lot of Kenyans have pushed back against like these institutional failures in some capacity, but we also need to structure public participation so that if someone is paying private health insurance and they don't care, they in case there's a failure in the system which ends up economically disenfranchising them, they should have an option.
They should.
And for the petitions that are still out there, Okiya Omtata, the senator for Busia, has pushed back against the failures of SHA as an institution. It's still just out there somewhere, hoping that it works. But a lot of Kenyans, even online, are pushing for accountability daily, and we should join our voices together to just make sure that doesn't die. Like next week, we don't get sidetracked by something else. We just keep focus on like how we can, how we can make sure institutional failure does not become our lived reality forever.
Speaking of inaction, the devastating case of Endarasha, exactly a year and a few days ago, when over 20 kids died in a fire in a primary school somewhere in Nyeri. Just in 1 year later, the government is saying nothing about it. And the parents say that the last word they had was, come pick your deceased kids' belongings.
Yeah. Hey, so it's hard. So I have a niece who's about 8 years old. She's very lovely. She's called Elika. I look at my niece and like she goes to school, like I speak to her mom every day whenever she's like out of school and everything. Like I speak to her, she's very cheerful. She's like a very amazing kid. And I just keep thinking, if this kid were to go to school and not come back, I don't know what would happen to me, let alone my sister. Like just the emotional toll it would take on a parent. And Roy was one of the kids in Endarasha. He tragically died in that fire. His dad said they followed up. They really followed up with the Ministry of Interior to try and get answers or some semblance of someone being held accountable.
Yeah.
And also just for the protection, not just for the kids who remain in that school, but also for the community at large and some kind of emotional support. Yeah. That did not happen. They were literally abandoned by the government. And now they're like, okay, because they've abandoned us, a lot of us are going to leave this area. So a lot of those parents left because they didn't feel safe. Yeah. They didn't feel that the kids that they had could be in that environment and still be safe. And Roy's dad was saying they have a younger daughter. And where they used to live, that's where they buried Roy. Yeah. So like every day the kid would wake up and it's like, Roy ako pale. And like that would just break the family all over again because like everyone is crying, everyone feels very distressed. What ended up happening, they moved because it became too much of an emotional toll for them to live in that area. Yeah. But I feel like Roy's dad or like Roy's family got lucky. Maybe they did have the resources to move. It doesn't do anything to solve the emotional heartache, but to know that there's still kids in Endarasha, to know that there's people in that area who still trust the system to take care of their kids even after the fact. And it's not like Endarasha is not the only institution that has had this problem. I have a joke that I do usually on my stand-up. I say like, I went to prison really early. Sorry, I went to boarding school really early. And I feel like a lot of our institutions feel like that. It's very carceral. We're not allowed to speak up against the system. Even just pointing out that we don't have what are they called? Fire extinguisher. We don't have an exit point. We don't have even someone in the system who knows how to break it down to kids so that they're safe during an emergency. If all these things are not in place. And we're telling the kids of Endarasha one day you will get justice. Or we're telling the parents of the kids, we will figure out justice for you. I believe like justice doesn't just stop at shutting down Endarasha. I believe justice actually happens when all school systems can protect all the kids all the time. Yeah.
Like when you send your child to school, you should be sure that they should be back.
They'll be safe.
They'll be safe.
Yeah.
I've seen our politicians traveling and they came back very in awe of Singapore and all those countries. I was also shocked the first time I left Kenya for Switzerland, where kids just enter the bus, it drops them at the gate of the school, they enter the school, they are picked by their teachers, in the evening they are put on the same truck and it drops them at their house. And I was saying, hey, my country, try that. So we need as citizens to come up with citizen agitation platforms that are not necessarily political, but are agitating for the rights of citizens. We cannot leave it always to civil society. And civil society works hard. We are not perfect. We have our weaknesses, but it's not fair when we are attacked and called evil society. People within civil society actually work. They really work to protect the rights of Kenyans day and night, and not because they have resources. They are people like me with nothing, but they are challenging the system. And every day they wake up to try and protect the rights that are enshrined within the Constitution for Kenyans. So even as citizens, we need to support these systems. You see other countries support even their CSOs. Send even 10 shilling donation to CSOs. Because these CSOs represent you. They represent your rights. And let us start creating systems that protect our people, protect our rights. Because a lot is breaking down in our country.
And speaking of CSOs, people tend to think that activists or people who dedicate themselves to social justice live this lavish life, when it's not the case. Most of the people who agitate and organize to go to protest in these informal settlements where kids are getting shot by police officers and nothing being done, some of them even struggle with addiction because they literally have nothing to live for. The social justice that you're seeking is your only way of finding purpose, or even making a little money to keep things going. But to keep the lights on, most of these people just volunteer to do these things and hope they land their next meal. Phyllis, we've spoken so much about what's happened at Owino Uhuru, the devastating effects of that, the continuing effects, the lack of compensation, Justine and Endarasha. Just so much darkness hangs over this country that we call Kenya. And the government is on a daily basis working to make sure that that doesn't change. If anything, it only works to make it worse for us Kenyans. Phyllis, is there anything you'd want to wrap up with? For me particularly, would be the question, what next? What next for Irene and all those thousands of people who still live in a lead-contaminated area?
And also just to speak about restorative justice.
So this fight has taken like my whole life. And I have not seen what I wanted to see. The systems have completely failed us. And there's nothing that we have not tried. There's no institution that we have not knocked on their door. Many Kenyans know about this case. I think a lot of Kenyans know about this case, but it still doesn't ensure justice for the victims. This is not only about Owino Uhuru. It's the state of our country. It is the state of it's a mirror of who we are as a country. And therefore, my last word to Kenyans would be, speak up. Don't wait until we have to go on the streets. When communities are agitating, because it's not just one community, when Owino Uhuru is agitating for their right to a clean and healthy environment, add your voice to them, When Uyombo is fighting against a nuclear power plant brought smack in the middle of their community, find out what is going on in Uyombo and stand with them. That is the only way we are going to bring accountability. But when causes that touch at the core of our rights are ignored, and the only thing we pay attention to is politics, it ends up harming us. And it's also a way that these cynical guys within government protect themselves and control us. So let us intentionally decide that we are going to back communities, we are going to back CSOs, we are going to back institutions that are created to protect our own rights. When you talk about restorative justice in Owino Uhuru, as I've said, the first step for me, unfortunately with, the problem with me is that I've done this for too long. And I would like to see the younger generation picking it up. And I'm so proud of the Gen Zs in my office. They are doing amazing. They see black and white, just like I used to when I was that age. Because my ideal for restorative justice was where these people who made those decisions are brought to book. That Kenyans watch them answering why they took this decision on behalf of Kenyans. And then they are made to feel the pain. We have to go after their assets or something like that. Right now it's the taxpayers' money that is going to compensate the victims. You understand? Yeah. That is really no justice. It's really some form of relief, for some of the victims. But for me, I would say the journey is not even halfway done. We have records, and thankfully these records are not going to go bad. They've tried to raid us, they've stolen our computers, but we have records. Yeah. After we get these people compensated, we want to go back and create a system where these people fear accountability. Because right now the decisions that they are making, the letters they are writing to us, very cynical, That's not the Kenya that was envisioned at independence. That's not the Kenya that we want to hand over to our children.
Yeah. Phyllis, I'm so sad, so saddened that we couldn't get into the nuclear plant in Uyombo. That because it's being moved somewhere else, and the same effects will go that way. It's now a CIA project, and it's being touted as a project that Ruto, yes, it's a very progressive and futuristic project, and most of all, the message is that it's being taken to Nyanza because those people have been marginalized for so long that this plant will change their lives. But Phyllis, thank you for coming. For my public participation, I'd like to remind you what I said last week, that continuous voter registration will resume on the 29th of September. So 21 days to voter registration for the 2027 election and everything in between to start again. That's what Kenyans have been begging for a very long time, and our commissioners are in place, and IBC is finally embarking on this journey starting 29 September. So go out there and register. That's if you haven't. And secondly, a very funny but also very alarming case of KRA raiding your accounts and proving you a liar. So there was a case against a company called Kirin Pipes Limited, where 54 million that was deposited into the account was treated as taxable income by the Kenya Revenue Authority, which means you have to pay taxes for that.
Because they couldn't explain the source of the income, and they were not able to attach
proof.
Where the money came from.
Yeah, so Kirin says that 31.6 million of it was loans, and 10 million was capital to start the business. KRA takes them to that they end up in a tribunal for tax disputes, and the tribunal, after listening to both sides of the argument, says that, hey, look, you didn't really provide evidence that met the evidential threshold for proving that this is not taxable income. Therefore, KRA can't tax you for this income. What this means basically is that KRA can now prove a case against any money that is transacted into your account if they want to tax it. If you can't prove that it's not income of any sort, KRA can impose a tax on it. This is also in line with what KRA passed in the finance bill, you remember?
Yes.
They sneaked that in where your M-Pesa transactions could be used to determine how much tax you pay. That could mean so many things for you, but we continue to see how KRA takes this in the next few months. But this could have far-reaching implications. Wale withdraw. We might all be in trouble, guys. But thank you for joining us, Phyllis, Justine. Kama kawaida, thank you for being ever so funny. Thank you for being so truthful.
Emotional. That's my word.
Emotional.
Yes. Yes, passionate.
Passionate is the best one, actually. Phyllis, we should have you as a co-host.
Yes, yeah. Should just put my
your thoughts in the right word. But thank you for joining us. See you next week and have a good night.